Good evening. I'm Jim, and this is my faith journey. It's kind of a three-chapter story, so we'll kind of do it in three chapters. I was born in a little town in northern Couchiching County, Little Fork. I know Dick is well aware where that is. Some of you may know where it is. 1962, back when I was born, things were going really well up north then. Logging industry was strong, and paper mills and lumber mills and everything were really strong. So communities were quite vibrant, and things were really happening up in Couchiching County at the time. Since then, you probably know things have slowed down quite a bit, and towns are smaller, and it's a little different than it was. But I was born Catholic and baptized shortly after birth. We were a strong Catholic family, a large family of 8 children, and we were a strong Catholic faith. We went every Sunday to church. We went to all the holidays, and both my dad and my mom were very active in the church. And as a young person, I did everything that young Catholics did. We had our first communion at age 6. Went to release time religiously. It was every Wednesday. We'd walk over from elementary school over to the church, our little St. Columbians, and with my Catholic friends, and we would have our release time. And I don't know if you guys can picture it, but you know, back in the 70s, Catholic families were usually quite large. So when you went to church, pretty much each family took up a whole pew. So it was. I know we have a couple of those families in this church, but it's not like it was back then. I mean, the Larsons were there, and the Wimmers were there, and the Timmers were there, and you could go on and on naming names. It was big families. So there was plenty of us that would march over from the elementary school over to release time at St. Columbians. Did the altar boy thing. I really enjoyed being an altar boy and serving Mass that way, and was quite involved in the church until my teenage years. And when I was 13 or 14, when I was 13, my dad became very sick, and by the time I was 14, he had passed away from lung cancer, and that's kind of when chapter 2 for me starts with my faith journey. Because in chapter 2, I still was a good student and a good member of community, but I wasn't very faithful. I was doing a lot of sinning, and I was being quite selfish in those years. And that went on for quite some time. I pretty well released myself from going to church. Seeing my dad lay there in a coffin at 14 years old, it was heart-wrenching, and I couldn't go back to church. And then at 17, just prior to starting my senior year in high school, I had a brother commit suicide. And that was the next time I was back at church, was to see my brother laying in the coffin there. And by that time I was angry. And I don't know what I was angry at, but I was just angry. And so I was focusing on myself and my selfish life. Still got an education and got a job, and worked up on the range for a while till I got laid off in the 80s. You probably all know that things kind of took a turn for not just the logging industry up in Couchiching County, but in this area as well, but on the Iron Range. So a number of us at Northern Electric, where I started my career as a line worker, I think we laid off 6 employees. I was a young apprentice, and ultimately I ended up moving to Wisconsin, and I worked over there for Electric Co-op for a while, and that was good. Still not going to church. I maybe had gone to a couple weddings. One of those was my first marriage, which was in 1986. I was married in a Lutheran church, little Lutheran church in Little Fork. Gal I knew from back home. We got married. We made it 2 years. Both of us were selfish, and neither of us were ready to be married. So that was my first marriage, and and it was quite a failure. Still continuing my career as a line worker. I was staying safe, so that's a good thing. So somebody must have been looking after me through my faith journey. But I had gone through a lot of the things at the Catholic Church, as I said, baptized as a baby, first communion at age 6, went to the communions that we had to do, where if some of you have been Catholic, you know, as when you go to communion, you talk directly to the priest, and then they're going to tell you what your penance is, which always is kind of puzzling to me, but that's what we did. And so I went through all that, but I never was confirmed. And ultimately, I ended up here in Grand Rapids, moved here in 1990. Myself and my girlfriend, who was pregnant, and we got married right in this church. I got to know Bob Affelt, and Bob was actually the one that married myself and my second wife, Tammy. He married us here in this church. George Gilbertson, Pastor George, said that would be fine, and so we did that. And we had a nice little ceremony in here with our families, and I guess that was my first exposure to St. Andrews. I fell in love with the place. I just thought it was the neatest little church, the setting here, and probably was the first time I'd felt connected. But I still wasn't going to church. I was too focused on, all I wanted to do was work and play sports and do my thing, and ultimately it ended up costing me my marriage again. We separated in 95, and I was divorced in 96 for the second time. And after I was divorced the second time, we had 2 sons, Jimmy and Aaron. They were both baptized in this church in 95, which was really nice. What brought us, I guess, why we had the boys baptized at that time, I'm not sure. But they were 5 and 2, and I'm really glad that we did it. And in 96, I came to this church with a friend for Good Friday service. And that was when it finally, I guess chapter 3 finally started for me, was when I started connecting again. I think one of the things that really got me was the men's choir stood up and sang a piece, and I turned to my friend, I'm like, holy smokes, that's awesome. Just couldn't believe what was coming from that balcony up there. And as a lot of you know, I'm pretty involved now with the music ministry here, so that was something that I guess attracted me. And at that time, when we were divorced, I had the boys half the time, and the thing I started thinking to myself was I needed to do something positive for the boys, so I thought joining the church was probably going to be a good thing for us as a family, so I became a member here. And eventually I met third time a charm over here, Rochelle, in 1997. She was divorced with 3 children. In 2000, we were married in this church. Was the most awesome ceremony you could have. If I start thinking about it too much, I'm going to start crying, so I'll be careful here. But, and then, you know, raising a blended family, I'm sure some of you have done it. That can be a big challenge in itself. But well, I should mention that I was confirmed here as well. When I became a member, I was confirmed to the church here. And then eventually Rochelle joined, and she was confirmed here. All of our children were confirmed here. So really, chapter 3 of my faith journey has all been right here. This place is just, it's done so much for me. It's felt so welcoming. I guess that's one of the things I struggled with the Catholic religion, was it always felt so much like a regiment, and I guess when I think back on what Martin Luther decided to do, I can understand. I know there was a lot more going on in the Catholic Church at the time, but for him to take another path, I can see why he did, because I was glad I did. And the Lutheran faith is just makes it feel so much more warm and welcome and like a family more than a regiment. Recently, my mom passed away. My family wanted me to do some singing at her funeral. Because I wasn't Catholic, they wouldn't even allow me to sing at the funeral. We're not as outsiders welcome to take communion at the Catholic Church. Was something until Pastor Dave welcomes everybody, and that's how I think a faith should be, is we should all, whether we're Lutheran or Presbyterian or whatever you are, Catholic, there might be times where we should walk together. And that's what I love about this place, is we're all welcome here, and even rejects of religion like myself are welcome here. So I guess that's chapter 3 for me, is this place. I've been just real thankful to be involved with the music ministry here. Rochelle and I were involved with the youth committee for many years, and we made a lot of egg bakes, I know that. So we did a lot of youth breakfasts here. Our kids had an opportunity to go on some of the youth trips, and they, Camp Hiawatha and everything. So it's been really awesome to have our family go to church here and to connect with the Lutheran religion, as Martin Luther set it up for me as a reject of the Catholic faith. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at right now, is still have chapter 3 going. I hope there's much more to add to that chapter, but that's where I'm at with my journey in faith. So thank you.